beautiful Faculty Center for Excellence in the Fowl Library. And thank you to those of you who are here online. And thank you to our colleagues in the Faculty Center for Excellence for co-hosting this lecture series with us, the Provost Presents Faculty Research. I am Rebecca Lubas. If you haven't met me before, I'm the Dean of Libraries here at CSUSB, and I am delighted to be showcasing faculty research here on campus. And so thank you again for coming. This is a series, so we have one more coming up for this semester at the end of April, so please watch for that. And I am going to hand it to the guy in the title. Provost presents Provost Rafiq Mohammed.
Thank you, Dean Lubas, and I am heartened by this turnout today. Thank you all for coming and joining us this afternoon. When you said "guy" in the title, I was like, "Yolanda, is that me?" But that's you. Well, yeah, we'll get to. Never met you before, unfamiliar with your work, so we'll see how this goes. I have a scripted introduction, but Dr. Youngs and I go way back to when you were first hired here at CSUSB, because I think I was the one that called you and made you an offer. So there we go. And I duped her, so she joined us, and now we are the beneficiaries of that. So I'm thrilled to have you here today, and thank you for. I think this is the last one of these for the year, right? One more? Oh, never mind. I was going to say thank you for closing the series out, but whatever. Thanks for being the penultimate. Bringing us in. That's right. That's right. In a landing that hopefully is smoother than a lot of other landings we've seen with aircraft lately. But anyway, welcome again, and thank you all for joining us for this series that was started by Dean Lubas and the Fowl Library and the Faculty Center for Excellence, and then I just slapped my name on it to try to take some credit or glory for it. But I am thrilled to have here today Dr. Yolanda Youngs, not Young, it's Youngs, who I'm going to tell you a little bit more about. But Dr. Youngs, I think, as you all know, is a professor of geography and environmental studies here at CSUSB. She joined our campus community in August 2021 after serving nearly a decade at Idaho State University. She teaches several courses at CSUSB, including conservation and natural resources, environmental sustainability, national parks and public lands, and environmental justice, among others. Her current and ongoing research includes long-term environmental mapping, tracing environmental management in the Grand Canyon, and climate resiliency and heritage preservation. I don't think I told you the story, and this is not why we're here, but this is just to relax you a little bit. So she had a book launch the other day, about a week and a half ago, hosted by Dr. Claire Todd from our geology department. Anyway, it was a wonderful time. I came down because they invited me, so I showed up. But I was looking for, I might have told you this, but I was looking for beer made by Grand Canyon Brewing Company, which I just assumed existed. And apparently it does. But I couldn't find the beer locally. But there is such a thing. All right. Not that I know anything about beer, body's a temple and all that other kind of stuff, right? So anyway, page 2. Dr. Youngs has written or co-authored more than 30 journal articles, books, book chapters, book reviews, scientific reports, and essays featuring her research in sites across the U.S. National Park Service system. She is also the current chair of the American Association of Geographers Protected Areas Specialty Group and an active member in the U.S. National Committee of the International Council of Monuments and Sites, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, International Geographical Union, and the Royal Geographic Society with the Institute of British Geographers. She's also the inspiration for something that I'm going to work on for next year called Side Hustles, where we talk about other things that faculty do that are really interesting to me in particular. But like, you were a river guide for a while prior to your foray into full-time academia. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I want to learn more about that. Her presentation today, titled after her latest book, Framing Nature. My copy's right here, the one with the bookmark in it. Um, Framing Nature, the creation of an American icon at the Grand Canyon, will explore how visual representations such as postcards, maps, and photographs have transformed the Grand Canyon into an iconic symbol of American cultural identity. And before I get to the big prize, she also graciously brought me a copy a while ago. I've read chunks of it and have found it absolutely fascinating. And beautifully written. So thank you for sharing that with me. But beyond my praise, because that doesn't matter, what really matters is the book recently earned her the Association of American Geographers John Brinkerhoff Jackson Prize. This prestigious award recognizes American geographers who write books about the United States that convey the insights of professional geography in language that is interesting and attractive to a lay audience. The last thing I will note before I ask you to come up, even though you're already up, I also had the great pleasure of meeting your dissertation chair the other day, who came in just to celebrate you and the launch of your book, but was explaining to me how big a deal that particular book award is. So kudos on that, and thank you for bringing the hardware home to CSUSB. Dr. Yolanda Youngs.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much, Provost Mohammed. That is a wonderful introduction. I deeply appreciate it. And a big thank you to all of you attending today in person here. We have a very nice group, as well as online. Guess you're over there. And I also want to say thank you to the library and to my home department of Geography and Environmental Sciences and the Department of History, as well as Dean Hasija of my college. And again, a huge thank you to students for coming today. I know you have busy lives. I'm glad that you're here. So just a little overview of where we're going with this talk, so you know what's happening. You can keep pace with it. I'm going to start off with a brief introduction to my research expertise in the book project, although the provost already did such an excellent job. We're going to click through these slides pretty quick. Then I'm going to move on to research goals and my data and field methods, because I know there are a lot of students in the room and hopefully online as well. It's an important part of building a research project, and this one is a little different from other ones out there. Thus, it won, part of the reason it won that award, so I'll provide a little of that. It's a big book. You just saw the provost hoist it in the air, so I can't present all of it today, but I will present two vignettes, that is two small bits of the research, and then we'll conclude by asking ourselves, where is the real Grand Canyon? Seems like an obvious question and answer, but let's find some more out. Hopefully, there we go. Okay, so already a wonderful introduction to me as a scholar, but I am a professor here in the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies, or Sciences sometimes. My work is environmental and geospatial. A lot of my work is long-term environmental monitoring. So that means I go out to places each year, often national parks or UNESCO World Heritage Sites or UNESCO Biosphere Reserves, and I take pictures basically in the exact same places year after year, and I have these very large data sets of visual imagery that documents habitat restoration, climate resiliency, and some other key items. I'm also very much involved with environmental policy and management, and as you've already heard, my sites are in national parks and UNESCO areas, and those are a few of my other research locations. This is a map that's often in my head as geographers, and many of you are students in the room in our field, faculty, or if you're just sort of geospatially inclined, you have a map in your head all the time. And this is the one that's often front and center for me. It's sure the United States, but it's also showing us all the national park units, and there's over 433 in the United States. I've done research in or visited 204 of them in all 50 states in all regions of the National Park Service for a variety of my projects. So the comments that I'm saying today and much of that book are based in the Grand Canyon, but they come from a much larger breadth of my research. And as I want to mention, but the provost already did such an able job of it, I'm very delighted for a career high, which is winning an award, the Jackson Prize for this particular book. I was just at the Detroit AAG meeting in Michigan and picked up the award from our president. This is a really wonderful thing, but also it's a very distinctive book award. It's not just for doing a good job. It's for writing a book, as the provost noted, that is both scholarly and appeals to a lay audience. And I was very intentional in writing this book. This is my second book, and this one I crafted for this award, but really this audience, as well as the public audiences that I've been to. This has been a banner semester. In March, among other things, besides of receiving that award at the AG meeting, I also presented on 2 book panels at the Tucson Festival of Books in Arizona. This is 130,000 people in 2 days. There was over 1,000 people that attended the national park panel that I was on that was sponsored by the Western National Parks Association. I also did 4 different book author signings. These are all things for students in the room. These are all things they don't teach you as a faculty, right? So it was an exciting and fun thing, but it's also an opportunity to get to know our audience out there beyond just scholarship and to work with the public. So, of course, the Provost Presents talk today is the highlight of the spring for me, but I'm continuing on with the book tour this fall, going to bookstores around the Southwest and other universities as well. The book is very visually heavy, so it's thick, but there's a lot of pictures in there. And I highlight that because, of course, my editor only allowed so many images in there just to keep it reasonable. But I'm going to show you many of the things that are in the book as well as not in the book today. One of the things that I've been doing quite a bit is podcasts and webinars. I've done interviews for NPR. It's been, I'll tell you what, writing a book about the Grand Canyon, it's a good way to get on keyword searches, apparently, right? And so one of the top questions that most of the public audience asks me is, well, why did you write this? There are a lot of books out there about the Grand Canyon, right? Did we need another one? I said, yes, we do need another one, right? So I wrote that because the Grand Canyon is iconic. And of course, it's a large draw. My previous work has been in Yellowstone National Park before I wrote this one. I'm coming back to Yellowstone now. But it's a place that a lot of people know. And I think that they have a lot of different ideas and perceptions about, particularly in terms of the places of the Grand Canyon. It's also really popular. Here's visitation, meaning how many people visit the park in a year. And I'm happy to show the 2024 visitation that was just released. It is one of the most visited national park units in the United States, so it's a popular place, right? It's also has a lot of meanings attached to it, right? It sounds like it's wild, and it is. It is beautiful, it is colorful, it is sometimes dangerous, but it is absolutely an icon of American landscape, or you might even say the North American landscape. When I was considering writing this book, I came across this article that really struck out to me. This is from the Arizona Republic, a newspaper in Phoenix, Arizona. And you could see here from the title, it says, "Which Grand Canyon is the real Grand Canyon?" Now, I'm a geographer. I'm very into places, and I thought, this isn't tough. There's one. It turns out there's multiple Grand Canyons is behind the scenes. But what they were getting to here with this article is actually this sort of discussion about which Grand Canyon should you go to for the authentic Grand Canyon experience. And here in this article, they're basically highlighting, let's see, the 2 Grand Canyons that they are suggesting is the one on the north and south rim that is in National Park Service areas over here, or the visitor facilities at the Wallapai Skywalk, which is sometimes called the West Canyon, right? This canyon, part of the Grand Canyon over here, is draws on tourism from Phoenix and Flagstaff. However, this area over here on the west is drawing a lot more from Vegas. And so people fly into Vegas and think they're going to the Grand Canyon, and they end up at the Wallapai Skywalk. It's very cool, but sometimes they think, is this the real Grand Canyon? Apparently, that's what this article is asking us to think about. So I'm going to ask you all to think about the Grand Canyon right now. You've seen some pictures already, and I'm going to guess that many of you have either been to the Grand Canyon or you've seen a movie or a picture or something, but think about it right now in your mind's eye. You're all with me on this, okay? What part of the Grand Canyon, what do you see in front of you? I'm going to guess that it looks maybe a little bit like this. So maybe not quite so scary, but maybe you might be standing on an edge, looking across a vast landscape. Maybe your view is a little broader, something like this. and look at the details in there. Does this match what's in your mind's eye when I asked you to think about the Grand Canyon? Things that I'm asking you about. What color is the Grand Canyon? Where are you standing? Where are you in the Grand Canyon? Are you on the rim as these folks are here? Are you walking down a trail? Are you down at the bottom of the canyon? Do you see the clouds in the background and this really distinct sharp rim above, right? And it turns out that when I was talking to people, I started to write this book. This is the most common thing that people said. And then I came across this really interesting study, a little bit outdated now, but still holds, from Northern Arizona University, that said, why do people come to the Grand Canyon? And I was amazed to see that apparently people come to the Grand Canyon overwhelmingly for canyon overlooks, meaning like where you stand up there and see the canyon. Also, just seeing the canyon itself. So here we have a major national park. It's an icon. People are just coming there to see it. They're not saying, I want to drive, I want to hike, I want to skydive, or whatever else might be on their list. They're saying, I just want to see it. So we've got a visual national park. And I found this very intriguing as I was starting the story. So if we're thinking about the Grand Canyon, and again, here's another sort of slice of mid-canyon, and we think about framing it, that is, putting some sort of boundary on the view that we see, what do we see out there? So let me tell you a little bit about the data behind this. Like I said, I'm going to spend a few moments on this because this book is a little different from other books you may encounter, and it was very purposely built. So this actually bridges across several different disciplines: national parks and protected areas and UNESCO sites research, visual and cultural media. It's a very visually rich book. Also outdoor recreation geography, and very much human-environment interactions. If we talk about how we might frame nature at the Grand Canyon, and that's, of course, the name of the book, but we think about here popular imagery, right? By popular imagery, I mean postcards, photographs. I didn't look at it, but this could apply as well to images that you see on websites or, Instagram or any sort of social media. And I think the popular imagery shapes our environmental perceptions of the canyon. It shapes park management and policies. It shapes outdoor recreation and visitor experiences, as well as cultural heritage and environmental justice. And quite frankly, it shapes just our geospatial understanding of where and what the Grand Canyon is, getting back to that where is the real Grand Canyon question. Now, it's a big place. The Grand Canyon, if we look at it in layers here, you can see at least the outlines of the Grand Canyon. And of course, the jewel or the centerpiece of the Grand Canyon is the Colorado River that flows through the middle here. But it's a big park unit. Just for the national park itself, it's 1.2 million acres. The river, Colorado River, that runs through it is 278 miles long. That's just in the park. It's, of course, a longer river than that. Another interesting thing to keep in mind is that the width of the canyon varies. And importantly, the north and the south rim are different elevations. So the north rim is about 1,000 feet higher than the south rim. That makes for a very different ecological setting, right? On top of that, we can add the mosaic of different land uses as well, right? So we have the national park. We also have national forests. We have multiple tribal lands around it. We have private towns and cities. There's a lot going on here. It's federal, it's state, it's tribal, and this is all coming together in this, location. This is a crazy clicker. Hold on a sec. Let me see if I can reconnect here. Whew. Okay, well, that was a lot. That was a lot. That was more than I intended. All right, here we go. So the Grand Canyon, what I suggested in my book is that the Grand Canyon is actually, when we consider the Grand Canyon, it needs to be considered as a much larger and distinct region. And so I very purposely set up this map here so that the Grand Canyon and what I call the Greater Grand Canyon region stretches into New Mexico, as well as up into Utah, over into Nevada, and of course, northern Arizona in part of that region. The field work for this book is, well, it's a lot. It was 15 years to complete the research and to write and publish this book. There was a tremendous amount of field work in the beginning, several years of it. I rafted down the Grand Canyon for 3 weeks straight. I've hiked up and down the canyon multiple times on multiple corridor trails, usually lugging giant backpacks full of all kinds of equipment. I've also driven on all the park roads and a lot of the roads around the park. I've done a lot of research at archives, local archives, regional archives, national archives. That also took quite a bit of time, but was very enriching, as you will see soon. And overall, in my field reconnaissance, I did a lot of landscape evaluation, and I had conversations, often informal, with park management and visitors. And one of my main methods that I use to compare the landscape of the past with the landscape of the present is something called repeat photography, which many of the students in my room here, you'll know that method because we've been using it in our classes. The idea here is that you take a historic picture such as this, you try to stand in the exact same spot, and you retake the exact same picture. It's really tough, actually, to do it just right as a scientist. But it informed my work tremendously. Just to give you a couple visuals here, again, my fieldwork was on the river, it was on the canyon trails, it was on the rim. And I mention all this and show you a few of these behind the scenes pictures, if you will, because this also informs some of the discussions, some of the conclusions I come to that oftentimes are quite different from other people who have written Grand Canyon books, who I would say maybe haven't been to the Grand Canyon as much as I've been to the Grand Canyon. In my time in the Grand Canyon, I'm a visual spatial person. I also divided up the canyon in terms of my thinking about where were images located. Again, remember, folks, I had a lot of historic images. I was trying to find the exact place that historic photographer was, and then evaluating the scene that I saw in front of me. So here's a picture I took at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Those of you with a keen eye, you might see a little raft down there for scale. So I talked about the river, the mid-canyon trails, the rim, and the aerial locations, right? Also thinking behind the scenes, I looked at a lot of different popular imagery. So much of that was postcards, and I looked at 3 different postcard manufacturers, and this provided something really fascinating. These were very, very popular items for the day, but these 3 different postcard manufacturers were basically publishing their postcards at the same time. And that meant that there was kind of a conversation, if you will, between the images, where they were going, what they were representing, and how they were promoting the canyon. And again, keep in mind, these were incredibly popular. This was like, well, I don't want to say the Twitter of the day anymore, but the Instagram of the day, right? It was short, and everybody, short in terms of images and what you could say, but everybody had them. I looked at over 400 of those postcards. The funny thing about postcards, you don't think about because we don't use them as much these days, they're around, is that there was a lot of editing going on in the images that you saw. So part of that process I learned about as well. And the process was, I'll be short about this, is that the postcard manufacturers would send photographers into the field, like this gentleman here. Those people would go into the field and they would have a list of places that they were supposed to take pictures of, maybe 5 or 6 places. But it was up to the photographer where they stood or what they included in that view again. They would send back their images to these large factories, and there were postcard factories, I'll show you in a second, and they would put little notes on them. Maybe you can see little scribbles here. This is them saying, add this, take this out, make it look different. They could entirely add and change images. They could remove and alter subjects. There was just a tremendous amount of editing and revising that would happen in order to go from a black and white image such as this to what colors were selected and what part of the frame were kept in an image such as this. And like I said, this was done by hundreds and hundreds of people. During the golden age of postcards, which you might say is 1930s to 1950s, but certainly postcards were from the 1800s through 1955 is really the big era. We're talking giant factories, mostly in Detroit and Chicago, some here in California, where there were hundreds of workers that were at desks with very tiny little paintbrushes. I'm not kidding. They were really tiny paintbrushes. They also had very specialized printers set up to print off these postcards each year. And they had, again, large groups of people that were at the fore and behind making the decisions about what would be included in these images. So it was really a process of not only creating these postcards, but remember, these were also globally consumed. They were very popular. People would buy them. They would send them around the world. Some people would just simply go buy them and collect them in albums and keep them to think about places they might want to visit someday. I want to show you, too, the archival research, and just to show you a little glimpse, the archival research I went into, luckily these postcard manufacturers were very detailed. They kept such detailed records that I found things such as this that's showing a work schedule. As every time someone would get one of those postcards, they would write how many minutes they spent working on that postcard, what they did, and then they'd pass it along the line. It was like, again, like a little postcard factory. I could also see the production records of who ordered what postcard, how popular they were, and this is also part of the work. So it was very much a combination of qualitative and quantitative research that went into figuring out how we go from this postcard through the various production process. So once again, just to give you a sense, there's a lot more images than you're going to see here, but 410 postcards from 3 different manufacturers, primarily producing between 1905 and 1955. I also looked at a very popular magazine called Arizona Highways, and over 1,000 images from there to kind of boost it up to a more contemporary time scheme from 1920 to 2009. And like I said, I was very interested in what was in the images. So basically, I was doing a method called visual content analysis. It's pretty easy, actually, but it just takes a lot of time. So that means every postcard, I would look at that postcard and I would have a little Excel spreadsheet and I put zeros or one. One, was there a mule in it? 0 if there was no mule. And I would just go through every single postcard. I remember I was doing this research. I was listening to podcasts and I heard an interview, I think it was on NPR, of someone saying, can you imagine if you had to look at every picture of the Grand Canyon? And I was sitting there slaving away over a hot computer looking at every picture of the Grand Canyon. So there was a little while like I didn't even want to look at pictures. But anyways, I found that through that visual content analysis that there were primarily 9 themes that pulled out. So I saw these particular subjects quite a bit in the imagery. And then again, remember, I'm a geographer. I'm interested in where were those images. So I looked at vertically where they were in the canyon, and I also looked at horizontally where were they in the canyon, meaning were they at the Grand Canyon south or west or north, right? And I found something that geographers Wyckoff and Dilsaver call spatial bias. So here's one of the big takeaways is that for the thousands of images I looked at, which were only some thousands, there's many more Grand Canyon images. Of those images, there's really only about 10 places, and honestly, I would say 6 places that every picture of the Grand Canyon you've seen comes from. That was shocking to me. It's a big place, 1.2 million acres. There's a lot left out. And in fact, a lot of the book talks about the things that are left out. I looked at these images over time and I did what's called an iconographic analysis. Those of you in visual or culture media studies might recognize this. So basically, I looked at these images over time and where in the Grand Canyon and what was being shown as I traced its rise to iconography. Okay, so let me just share with you just a little bit in 2 vignettes, something more specific about my findings. The book has lots more in it, just to let you know, and we do have copies here, I believe. The early part of the book talks about river running, John Wesley Powell, as well as Colorado River allocation projects and dam projects and all that. So if you're interested in that, check that out. There's also lots more sections on Arizona highways. So just to let you know, I'm just slicing a little bit of what we have available here. The first vignette I want to present is editing nature and thinking about how the canyon's environment was shaped by these images. Again, think about where we're being shown the Grand Canyon and what kind of experiences you might have there. And part of this comes from when I was doing my field work, I was always amazed at sunset every day. There would be this rush of people out of whatever lodge or restaurant or wherever they were, and they needed to frantically ask anyone they could see, where is the best sunset view? Please tell me. And the poor people who were working whatever lunch counter would be like, just go outside, right? The whole thing is really beautiful at sunset, but people were very eager for it, to the point that by the end of my field work, the park companies were actually putting up TVs showing it, well, here's the best place for sunrise and here's the best place for sunset. And everybody would rush to drive or get on the van and go over there. So I thought this was kind of interesting that some people had these ideas in their head, but it turns out the places that people wanted to go in those named viewpoints were the exact same named viewpoints and locations that we were shown in postcards over 150 years before. They had been replicated over and over again until now we see them as the best place for a sunrise or a sunset. So in thinking about these postcards, let's think about how environmental perceptions that we might get from these postcards might affect park management of natural resources. And again, these are just a few vignettes, but thinking about the vegetation, water resources, geology, biodiversity, things that you think might be pretty stable about the park. The postcard manufacturers did all kinds of things. Remember, these are companies trying to sell products. That's really, I don't think they were trying to do anything nefarious here. They're just trying to sell something every year. And every year they would print a new set of postcards. So they would also trademark the ways that they would reprint those postcards. One of them, Kark was known for doing something called color embellishment. Embellishment means kind of adding a little bit of fluff to the truth, if you will, right? So here's an example of color embellishment that influences our ideas of how vegetation looks like, how the plants look like, and the biodiversity at the Grand Canyon. Here we're seeing Bright Angel Lodge, and this is really trying to support the 1930s Civilian Conservation Corps, who had recently done a lot of landscaping work, so they really add a lot of bright green all around here and really emphasize, they added a bunch more branches, and if you were to go there, and see Bright Angel Lodge, you might expect, well, I want some trees. I want some grass. What happens if you go there and it's just a brown desert? You might be a little disappointed, right? How about water? This was shocking to me as someone who works with water resources, lakes, lagoons. I'm always on some kind of water in a boat. The Colorado River was systematically and consistently represented as turquoise blue. Turquoise blue in the 1920s, the 1930s, 1940s. This is all before there was a dam that was constructed. And it was very blatantly colored in. And if you look at it, you could see they decided to just go blue here and then, I don't know, maybe touch up some blue up here too. Remember, hundreds of people in postcard factories with tiny paintbrushes making these, right? And also here, they just sort of painted this in as a bright blue. So the implications of this, if we see pictures such as this at the South Rim, and most of these images at the South Rim, we're showing just canyon views. They weren't showing the rim or the river, but when they did, it was bright blue. Or here, it's kind of interesting when we think to what the river really looked like, which would be something like this. Now, this is an image that I took at the bottom of the canyon after a rainstorm, but it represents the river that it would have looked like when these postcards were being created, in that it is sediment laden. It is a warm river. I know you can't tell the temperature here. And it was full of lots of different fish as well as vegetation species that were supported previous to those dams being constructed. And instead, this was being presented to the audience. And I suggest in the book that part of the reason that it was presented like this is that a lot of the audiences were coming from the East. So think Boston, New York, Chicago, places that have lots of bright blue lakes and rivers and coastline. They would be expecting blue water, not the brown sediment-laden water of our deserts. And again, all these postcards were created that I'm showing you well before Glen Canyon Dam upstream was constructed, right? So here's where we're seeing a lot of these postcards, and here's the Glen Canyon Dam area. And to be clear, if you were to go to the Grand Canyon, and I know some of you have, it's not easy to see the Colorado River from the south rim of the Grand Canyon. In fact, the Park Service has had this new informational brochure here, just pointing it out, find it. It's this little bit right there, right? So it's not easy to see anyways, but again, that was something that the postcard manufacturers wanted to encourage. How about the geology of the Grand Canyon? That seems like something that can't change. But in fact, our colors and our ideas that we have about the Grand Canyon, those connect to the different types of rock layers at the Grand Canyon. And those were changed quite a bit over time in imagery as well. So here's some of my repeat photography work. We have a postcard from 1905, postcard from 1909, and then my retake in 2008. And if you kind of cast your eyes, particularly along here, and see the differences from the bright red here to green to a little bit lighter there, you could see some of the liberties that were taken, right? It's also interesting to look at an image like this. Again, how many postcards have you seen of the Grand Canyon? It looks something like this, right? It doesn't seem that surprising. But I found these to be incredibly rich photographs or postcards because most of them just said from the South Rim, which is hundreds of miles long. So it was difficult to find these. But also the colors that were being shown here. And when I looked at the archival research, I found the information that I was craving as to why did these postcards look that color. Well, in the archival research, I would find things like too much green and yellow. There should be more red shown. So the postcard manufacturers were encouraging us to think about the Grand Canyon as red and maybe some orange too, right? The other thing that's fascinating to me, perhaps the most shocking part of all this research, is the information I found about biodiversity in the Grand Canyon. This is a section I call the Call of the Domestic because it was stunning how little of the Grand Canyon's biodiversity was represented in any, again, 150 years of images. The Grand Canyon has 91 species of mammals. That's a higher mammalian species diversity than Yellowstone National Park. You could see here some of the varieties and species that we have in the Grand Canyon. And if you go to visit the Grand Canyon, you'll see bison, elk, ravens. This is today. This is historic. This is not new. You'll see, as I said, elk. You'll see our friends, the whistle pigs down here begging for something probably. And, you know, the Park Service recently has become very cheeky with their suggestions about what to do with wildlife. So they have things like this posted around the park, encouraging people to keep their distance from wildlife for your own safety as well as theirs. And so this suggests that we have so much wildlife that, in fact, the Park Service would like you to keep your distance. Yet, when we looked at the images for 150 years, all we saw in any of the images were mules, horses, and burros, right? That was it. And then some deer occasionally, right? So no reptiles, no birds, no elk, no bison, certainly no predators, right? What kind of implications could that have? It was interesting in terms of seeing, again, just to show you briefly some of the archival work from this, one of the biggest icons of the Grand Canyon, besides of the canyon itself, are mules. People love taking mule rides. And here we're seeing a very, very popular, this postcard was reprinted with different colors for many, many years. We're seeing the Grand Canyon, of course, in the background, that rimside view, and then we're seeing a mule's head here. And when I went back and looked at the imagery, I found, in fact, the archival research or archival documents showing that it was a retouched photo, and the documentation that they had basically cut out this mule head from another postcard that was pretty popular, but not that popular. And then they'd pasted it onto this. The creepy part was, and you can't quite see it on the screen here, is that there's these little like tendrils of mule hair, and they look kind of bloody and drippy. It was a creepy postcard to come across, but it got my interest, right? So in terms of thinking about what the implications might be here, in one way you're saying these are just postcards, what could be the influence? But remember, these were globally distributed. These were the promotion materials, if you were, for what to expect at the Grand Canyon. At the same time that these postcard pictures are being created and only showing us deer, mule, horses as the entire biodiversity of the Grand Canyon, we've got some really interesting things going on in the United States in terms of predator-prey dynamics. In 1915, the U.S. Department of Agriculture was actively funding predator control policies that were killing coyotes, wolves, and other predators. So we're not seeing those in postcards, right? It wasn't until 1929 that George Melendez Wright initiated one of the first biological surveys of our national parks. And at the same time, the U.S. Division of Predator and Rodent Control was created, right? So we had these two forces of basically changing and challenging our predator control policies. How about those mules and horses we see so many of? Mules have a complex and contested history in the park as well. They were introduced into the park with miners as a way of the miners getting down from the rim to the river where they were mining uranium and all kinds of other interesting things, or attempting to. And so they were a form of transport for the miners. And then as tourism started to become more popular, the miners started to abandon their mining operations and shifted their work towards tourism. And many of the mules were just simply released into the wild in the canyon. And at that same time, and moving forward, we have people taking mule rides for recreational activity into the canyon. And those, of course, are domesticated mules, but we're seeing the same animal basically sort of cross in the crosshairs here. as people are becoming or continue to really enjoy those mule rides, there's also a lot of public outcry for mule protection. And in 1971, the Wild Free Roaming Horses and Burro Act comes around as a public outcry to all the wild mules that were being killed. And the public just wasn't seeing the difference between those exotic species and how they were being handled in the Grand Canyon. All right. Okay, a big shift here, but my last little vignette is thinking about the canyon as home. And in this section, I think about also some things that may seem obvious at first, but perhaps not. And that is who visits the Grand Canyon? Who lives in the Grand Canyon? Who calls this place home? And some of these images that I'm showing you here are particularly striking. They're all from the research that I came across in terms of these were all representation of people in the landscape. Some of them I expected, some of them I did not. Now, of course, the Grand Canyon has been home to many tribes, 11 affiliated tribes, for thousands of years. This is well before any postcard history. The Park Service has done a slightly better job of connecting with some of these communities. But the context here that I want you to think about is that within the Grand Canyon, and here's the Colorado River and what becomes the national park here, we're seeing the Grand Canyon in this context of tribal lands and waters and sharing of these spaces. And today, if you look at the current tribal reservations and Grand Canyon National Park, you can also see that context more fully. All right. So it's interesting to think about, well, who is controlling and managing the park and who is allowed in and what sort of activities were going on. And again, we can somewhat trace that with the postcards as well as some of the other imagery I looked at. Grand Canyon went through a lot of different land management changes. I won't get into all those details. That's from a national parks course. But in 1908, it officially became a federally managed and protected space as a Grand Canyon National Monument. It was actually a much smaller unit than what we have now. And so here I have this overlay of the National Monument boundary in 1908 as opposed to the larger national park that we see now. And then, of course, later on in 1919, it becomes a national park. It expands slightly. But the important thing here is that it moves from being an area of U.S. Forest Service management, federal land management agency, to Anglo settlers and Native American residents, and starts to shift to the Holy Three here, the Santa Fe Railroad, the Fred Harvey Company, and the U.S. National Park Service. Many books have been written about this era, so I encourage you to go look at them. I reference them in my book. I'm happy to take questions about it. But the really distinguishing thing here is that this shift also moves this marker from an era where there was many tribes that were sharing and using this land for thousands of years, and now we're seeing a real movement towards the economic uses of this place for other venues. And by, for example, 1926, the roads that we know of the Grand Canyon are well laid out, the train tracks, and many of the visitor services as well. So just to remind you, this is the context that this is all happening in, is that in this larger space of tribal lands. During the era of a real boom, again, we're looking here at visitation numbers from 1944 and into the 1950s. We see a lot more auto tourism. We see a lot more visitors coming to the Grand Canyon. And again, expecting these bright red canyon views. And of course, there's our blue Colorado River as they're taking these tours. And it's also it's something that I tracked of seeing the Grand Canyon becoming such an icon that postcards stopped even showing it. You know, those early postcards I was showing you, you saw the whole view of the Grand Canyon, view from South Rim. Well, by the time we start moving along here, they're just going to put it in the background. And in fact, this postcard drove me nuts for a long time because it may not look that exciting to you. You know, here we've got two folks sitting in front of a fireplace in Bright Angel Lodge. But this is what drove me nuts, is this canyon view back here. This is currently a gift shop it's still there in the Grand Canyon. And I would stand here and I would have my postcard and I'd try to see that view, and it was just impossible. And I couldn't figure out how the photographer got that shot. And then I started to realize, well, they didn't really need the real Grand Canyon there or even the real view there. They just needed to show that this room was at the Grand Canyon to sell that postcard. And in fact, I finally, after years, found the archival documents that said basically, oops, that said, fake canyon view in window as per magazine illustration attached. So what they did was they just cut out a picture from something else and just jammed it in there, right? So that shows not just any room, it's a room at the Grand Canyon. Finally, the last thing I want to emphasize here is that these are really fascinating documents for their global distribution, for their reproduction. But every time one of these postcards was reprinted, and every year these postcard manufacturers would reprint these, they were going through a process of revision, framing, and selection. And there was also this repetition of the same, again, just a handful of places over and over again. And these were widely distributed. And I also want to remind you of geographer Richard Schein, who suggests that documents such as this, they are not just innocent documents of, say, the built environment, such as El Tovar Hotel. They are constructed images of constructed places. There are people behind these images who chose the view. There are people behind these images that chose what we're going to see in there. And remember, they could take it in or add it, right? Just like a sort of modern Photoshop. So this particular image drove me also nuts for years until I found the archival work behind it. I couldn't figure out why these people were standing here by these bushes in the middle of the image. And then I found the documentation that said, oh, put people back that were taken out. I'm like, oh my God, you took people out of an image. I don't know why that surprised me more than the mules getting taken in and out, but it has some really serious implications, especially when you think about Wallapai use and access to the river to the canyon that was not allowed at this time. When you think about the Havasupais challenge with accessing the Grand Canyon, this part of the Grand Canyon, to say put people in that were taken out could have some pretty serious implications. So if you compare these two images, I'll let you just kind of cast your eyes here. You could see what drove me wild, right? This was the image the postcard I first came into contact with. And you could see, notice the differences between the two, the coloring of El Tovar Hotel, maybe the way that they've decided to shade out the Grand Canyon. And we're looking here at the top of Hopi House, basically a gift shop and domesticated scene. And looking down onto the main driveway here where auto tours would start for their mornings. And it was only later that I found this postcard that actually showed us the people that were taken out as well as the auto cars. And in my book, and my press did a wonderful job of reproducing this. I point out specifically the things that were taken out and shifted over time. And again, this was one of the most popular postcards. So every year the colors were changed, people were taken in, taken out. But you have here a real mixture of canyon scenes as well as population, right? So to wrap things up, let's go back to that. Where is the real Grand Canyon? I hope you've seen through these images that what we think of as an authentic Grand Canyon, or in fact, even where is the Grand Canyon, or what do we conclude as the Grand Canyon, can shift over time, and it can shift over the images that we are seeing. I'll leave you with this last image that's a really weird postcard I came across. That's a pastiche of lots of different parts of the Grand Canyon that suggests that maybe there's multiple real Grand Canyons. We see parts of the east and north rim here, the river, the rim. They threw in some lightning just for the heck of it. Again, sort of challenging us to think about multiple Grand Canyons. But I encourage you to think about the Grand Canyon as a much broader context, culturally, socially, politically, as well as environmentally in this broader region. And it's through that kind of thinking that I leave you with 3 key points to think about for this work. And this kind of iconographic analysis could be done for any major site. It could be done for the Statue of Liberty, for Venice, Italy. But if we were to think about framing the Grand Canyon, we need to think about environmentally sustainable and resilient future for the Grand Canyon that relies on understanding it in this broader context. As I said, the social, political, cultural, and ecological. I also think that seeing the Grand Canyon and how we see the Grand Canyon is very important. It shapes our perceptions, and those perceptions lead to decision making, how we vote, what laws we encourage, and who is allowed to be part of this landscape. And finally, just a consistent emphasis that the Grand Canyon is and has been for thousands of years a multicultural space, certainly one of the 11 affiliated tribes, as well as a significant space of Spanish, Mexican, and Anglo heritage. And it is currently a UNESCO World Heritage Site as well. So with that, I thank you all very much. And I'll also say that I have a just selfless promotion here. 40% off QR code right here. And I have postcards as well with the QR code. And I think we have potentially some books to sell and distribute as well. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Youngs. That was fascinating. I knew what some of it was coming, but I did want to we have a little bit of time, not a lot, a little bit of time for anybody that has any questions for Dr. Youngs. And if you don't, I do. So, uh, it, okay. Oh, there we go. All right. All right. All right.
Hi. So I know that you mentioned that it was difficult getting the repeat photography just right, and that was a really difficult part of the 15-year process. But was there anything else that you found challenging or difficult during this time at the Grand Canyon besides that repeat photography?
Certainly arranging thank you. There were a variety of challenges over 15 years. So arranging the 3-week Colorado River trip, as the provost mentioned, I'm a former river guide, and some of my students know this as well. So I worked on whitewater rivers of the West for over a decade. So I had those kind of connections. But doing the work that we like to do for fun and then making it part of your research is a different thing altogether. So there was a lot of repacking of equipment for either hauling down the canyon, hauling down the river, giving to someone else who was going to put it on a mule that would haul it down the river. There was lots of that kind of stuff. Also, the archival work. I tried to show you all some of the images, but it took me years to track down some of the documents that I found. Again, the archives were at the Grand Canyon. They were in Arizona, and then I traveled extensively for this, all around the United States. And so that was a challenge to find the right archives and to get access to those archives as well. Not that anyone was holding me back, but it takes a little bit of working to do all that. And then, the process of writing a book, it's different. And your professors will tell you this. It's different from a journal article that we might write more frequently. I conceived as the book as one thing, and then I got a sabbatical at the University of New Mexico a few years ago, and I gutted half the thing and rewrote it and made it more the book that it is today, because I wanted to emphasize more that multicultural sphere and get to know the tribes in New Mexico a little bit better. So lots of, is field research, archival research, and then just sort of making it all come together. Yeah, good question.
Hello, do you think the same thing is happening with like the bald eagle and giving them like a hawk sound instead of like the actual bald eagle sound?
That- Yeah, no, that's a great question. So yeah, I think that you could have, I emphasize the visual here, but I think you can have auditory as well. And again, in fact, that'd be a really cool paper to do, maybe for another class you take with me, where we look at the implications of changing out the species that are being represented. And that's a good ear to hear. But a lot of times when you watch golf tournaments, they'll just throw a red hawk in there, and you're like, "There's no way there's a red hawk at that place." So, yeah, good one. Other questions?
I know I see Dean Lubas coming up, which means we're essentially out of time. But I'm going to ask one last question, because whatever. That's right. It's this, and I hadn't thought about this until until your presentation just now, and so I don't mean this literally, but it's the way that I'm kind of putting it together. So in your book, you talk about kind of the depiction through postcards of what I'll say wild people, and here you have the juxtaposition of kind of the erasure of wild animals. So the kind of the overrepresentation of domesticated animals. But in your book, you talk about people who, I guess, more who tourists would more see as associated with the Grand Canyon. Could you say a little bit more about the people who were left out?
The image that I started off with for this section is something I go into detail. I go into this in more detail in the book, but I was shocked, surprised. It's a whole chapter in the book, and that was part of what I got it and redid at New Mexico. Was that almost consistently every time that's a person, and we only know who these people are because of the titles, so it doesn't mean necessarily that was who these people are. But when we see people in images such as this one that are represented as perhaps indigenous people, or at least dressed as such, and maybe in the title of the postcard, almost every single time they are inside doing domestic labor. It's the only time I saw children in any pictures. And almost always shown, if they're not inside and they're not working, they're often by what might be considered their homes, or they were also constructed. And I talk in the chapter about how just off view, if you will, there were Wallapai were not allowed to be in the canyon, or being forced out of the canyon, and just off view there was basically a shanty town where a lot of these they were treated as service workers, were living. This is a very rare image, and I love this image because this person's actually looking right at the camera, which I think is very modern. But yeah, there was this stark difference, which I call visual segregation. It was so dark. So.
All right. One last round of applause for Dr. Youngs. Thank you again. This was a treat.